All right. Former Destiny 2 game director and Marathon game director Christopher Barrett is suing Bungie and Sony for defamation. If you don't know where this all originated, many months ago we had a huge story that went out which was talking about harassment accusations towards Christopher Barrett within the Bungie studios. Basically, he was doing things like playing inappropriate games with different females. At least these were the accusations that were put against him. And Christopher Barrett didn't respond publicly at that time, or at least didn't make a big statement. He's decided to pursue legal action instead, and he's now issued this right now on Twitter. This just went live minutes ago from Christopher Barrett himself, as you can see here, game director, Marathon. The past 9 months following my departure from Bungie have been very difficult and painful for me, as I've had to endure rampant speculation, unfounded attacks on my reputation, and innuendo about what happened behind the scenes to cause me to be fired after 25 years of loyal service to Bungie. He's obviously worked there for a very long time. I want to thank everyone who has been there for me. I've eagerly awaited the opportunity to get the truth out there and tell my side of the story, and now is that time. Today, I filed a lawsuit against Sony and Bungie to hold them accountable for their conduct and the damage that has been done to my reputation and my career. I am confident that the facts are on my side and look forward to clearing my name through the legal process. Because this is a pending legal matter, there is nothing else I can say about it at this time. Wow. So, pretty wild stuff that we're actually having former game director suing Bungie. We also get an article to go along with this, so let's jump into this here. See everything that he says during this, I believe it's like a small interview here. All right, so we have from GamesBeat, ex-dev leader Chris Barrett accuses Sony/Bungie of firing him to avoid I believe it was a $24 million payout or $45 million payout. Wow. Chris Barrett was one of the prominent developers who was fired a few years ago during the Me Too scandals that hit the game industry. But Barrett, a game artist, filed a lawsuit today against his former employers, Sony Interactive Entertainment and Bungie, alleging they fired him to avoid giving him a $45 million payout he said he was entitled to. Barrett's lawsuit said the defendants deliberately destroyed Barrett's reputation by falsely and publicly insinuating that they had investigated Barrett and found he had engaged in sexual misconduct. Defendants did not care that none of it was true. They had blatant motivations for their brazen scheme. And that was the payout he said he was entitled to under his employment agreement. So he thinks that Bungie was trying to skip out on the bill by not paying the $45 million that he's owed by accusing him of sexual misconduct. Very interesting stuff. Obviously, the reports of sexual misconduct from those individuals would stand against that to some degree, so will definitely be interesting to see what comes of all of this. Like, it'll be interesting to see who ends up being the victor in this lawsuit, right? And that was the payout he's entitled to. The lawsuit went on to say the companies were motivated by a need to shift blame for and deflect attention away from their massive business failures. And to achieve those corporate objectives, they were willing to sacrifice Barrett. Really, very interesting stuff. While that sounds despicable, Barrett was accused of crossing the line between professional and personal behavior. In the course of its journalistic investigation of the Me Too scandal, Bloomberg interviewed 8 women in gaming who accused Barrett of sending inappropriate text messages. So Bloomberg did this whole expose, and it was something like, you know, he's a very powerful person within Bungie. This was the assumptions that were made, right? And these are all accusations. These are all allegations, rather. And it was assumed that he's very high, very powerful position within Bungie, and he's sending out messages trying to play like truth or dare with his colleagues, you know, people that were underneath him. And so that's where this all came from, was this huge scandal. Barrett started his career in video game industry by creating maps and levels for the game Myth for free as a fan at night after working his day job in New York, the lawsuit said. Bungie, the maker of Myth, recruited Barrett, and for the next 25 years, Bungie and Barrett had a remarkable ride. The suit said Barrett drove the artistic development of some of the world's most legendary video games franchises, including Halo and Destiny, the latter of which has been nominated for Best Ongoing Game at 2024 Game Awards, acquired a valuable equity interest in Bungie, and became the driving force and lead designer for Bungie's most important new gaming project, Marathon. All right, we know all this already. That ride ended abruptly in 2024 when Sony, which had acquired Bungie for $3.6 billion in 2022, acting in concert with Bungie, removed Barrett from his position in charge of developing Marathon and then baselessly fired him, allegedly for cause, following a supposed investigation, the lawsuit said. I don't know about that. I mean, obviously there's the actual courts where the laws will be decided, but then there's the court of public opinion. It doesn't look good, you know. I feel like, are you trying to say that all the different women that at least were reportedly interviewed by Bloomsburg were coerced or paid actors or something? I mean, it's not unimaginable necessarily, but it seems a bit odd there. We'll see what happens from it. Barrett alleges that he was told about an investigation into his behavior when he was on a mental health leave. He alleges that he attended the interview meeting with Sony's legal department, but was not advised to bring legal counsel. And he said he was never shown any of the text messages. Alright, well, definitely always bring legal counsel, what the heck? And he wasn't shown any of the text messages, interesting. So, oh, we're actually getting into the nitty gritty here. This is where things will get interesting. Barrett was never asked whether he had ever engaged in inappropriate sexual conduct, whether he ever sent inappropriate sexual or pornographic materials to a coworker, or whether he ever retaliated against a coworker for rebuffing his advances or discriminated against a female colleague on the basis of her sex. So he's never asked these. He basically wasn't. I think the word is deposed properly. He basically wasn't asked the appropriate questions to actually be removed of his position, is what he's going to argue, I think. Barrett was not asked those questions because Barrett did not engage in and has not been accused of any such conduct, the lawsuit alleged. Interesting. Less than 3 weeks. So he could be off. He could technically win this on a technicality. So there's that. In terms of the legal precedent, he could win this on a technicality of Bungie maybe firing him in a way that is inappropriate. Basically, I don't know. We'll have to see. This is getting actually interesting, but also scary. We're gonna see how far this one's gonna go, how far this lawsuit's gonna go. Less than 3 weeks after this interview, Barrett was notified via Microsoft Teams that he had engaged in unspecified gross misconduct and would be terminated for cause. Bennett refused to explain further and told him that nothing he could say would make a difference, despite never giving him a chance to engage with the allegations in the first place, the lawsuit said. The cause was a vague violation of Bungie's harassment policy, the lawsuit said. They then completed the Machiavellian trifecta by providing wildly misleading statements to Bloomberg designed to deflect blame for Sony's poorly performing $3.6 billion acquisition of Bungie and delays in video game production by casting shade on Barrett for his role on Marathon, shift blame for their own public #MeToo problems by falsely insinuating that the accusations of severe misconduct had been directed at Barrett when they had not, the lawsuit said. I don't know about that one. I mean, again, I don't know if I agree with that one. I mean, Bungie having their own problems with, their acquisition with Sony, Bungie having their own, business issues is a completely separate issue from Christopher Barrett and this whole sexual misconduct allegations. And I don't think that sexual misconduct allegations deflect or defer all of those other issues that Bungie has. I mean, we're still dealing with those issues, even though this thing is long since been done. I didn't even think this was going to be a new thing that would come up at all. I thought this was over and done with. I thought this was basically the book was closed on this one. The lawsuit also said Sony's $3.6 billion acquisition of Bungie has been a disaster. It said Bungie has struggled to meet financial targets, has fallen behind on deadlines, and Marathon, a centerpiece of the transaction, has been the subject of intense public criticism. By terminating Barrett for cause, defendants could save $45 million and pin the Marathon issues on Barrett in one fell swoop. So in one fell swoop, they could all blame everything, all of their problems, say, oh, Marathon isn't going as well as it could because of Christopher Barrett. These are the allegations that Christopher Barrett is now putting on Bungie, which is... that's pretty wild. I mean, I didn't even get that inclination reading all this. I kind of felt like, yeah, the game director for Marathon did something inappropriate, but clearly Christopher Barrett, all of that stuff aside, for years inside Destiny 2, we had excellent content that was produced. We're talking strictly the content, so I didn't really think that they were incapable of doing good things within Marathon. I didn't really pin that blame onto Barrett, but maybe the community did, and maybe he actually has a good case here. Maybe this will stand in a court as it stands from my opinion. I don't know, though. Bungie's struggles should not have been a surprise. The lawsuit continued. For the Sony acquisition, Bungie was in a difficult financial position. Destiny, the video game franchise responsible for the majority of Bungie's revenues, was not performing as well as Bungie had hoped. Yet, Bungie was able to strike a deal with Sony that enabled Bungie management to retain certain control post-acquisition. When Bungie thereafter under-delivered, the Marathon delayed, and Bungie's senior leadership in disarray, and with Sony looking to hold Bungie's leadership accountable, Bungie offered Barrett, who had been on the creative side and never active in business management, a sacrifice, the lawsuit said. Wow. And the lawsuit said prior to Barrett's termination, Bungie faced considerable public accusations of misconduct toward women. Firing Barrett allowed defendants to falsely pin those issues on Barrett and create a narrative that they were taking harassment issues seriously. After all, if they would fire a creator of their two main franchises, they could fire anyone. Never mind, Barrett had not engaged or been accused of misconduct at issue, much less any misconduct, the lawsuit said. Really interesting stuff. I mean, it's basically the only claim that I think Christopher Barrett could try to hold against Bungie. But it feels like a little bit far-fetched from Barrett's side. Like I get maybe where he's trying to come from with all of this stuff, but it's like, even if right now, let's say like some big name guy in Bungie got accused of whatever it was, any sort of crime or any sort of misconduct, you know, that's on them for doing that. And if the evidence shows that, then that's on them. Like, it's not Bungie using this controversy to deflect from the dawning glitches, you know. It's like, no, like, that's just a totally separate issue, and the two have no correlation between each other. And the connecting of these two dots, in my perspective, is far-fetched, so far-fetched. I don't see this happening at all, but again, that's just my opinion. Again, this is the court of public opinion here, so we'll see what an actual court says, court of law. The lawsuit claims that Barrett has been harmed financially, physically, and emotionally. He got physically harmed from this? I don't know about physical harm. He had been the subject of harassment and public ridicule. He lost his friends and professional opportunities, and has seen relationships with family strained. And to be fair, if the allegations are true, that is going to be, that's the consequences of said allegations, you know? His lifelong dream of launching his own video game company, once within reach for a respected designer of multiple legendary games, has been crushed, the lawsuit said. He's trying to launch his own game, or maybe one day. He'll never be able to do that. Barrett joined Bungie in 1999 after drawing attention as a Myth modder. He was credited for work on Myth 2. In early days, Barrett noted that the lawsuit, colorful language, and off-color jokes were common. Employees frequently and openly referred to things as gay or sexual mom jokes, and racist jokes were commonplace. Now, this is a thing that actually is talked about quite a bit, especially with the Activision expose, that there's a lot of, you know, basically like locker room talk within not just Bungie studios, I imagine, but just gaming studios in general. I mean, a lot of people I think people spoke a little bit more crazier probably 10 years ago, if I had to guess. Like, if you played in any COD lobbies, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Nudity was not prohibited. Nudity was not prohibited in Bungie. You got them walking around buck-ass naked. What is going on in those studios? I got some questions for Pete right now. Bungie personnel engaged in moonings in the office? Excuse me? What did he say? What did he say? Moonings in the office? Y'all are walking around developing Destiny with your butt cheeks out, flapping in the fucking air? What is happening in these studios where employees would pull their pants down and display their buttocks? He's explaining mooning, a practice that continued to some degree over the years. They're still doing it. They're still doing it. Barrett went on to work on Halo, which drew Microsoft's attention, leading to the acquisition of Bungie. He also had prominent roles later, like lead environment artist of Halo 2. He received a $200,000 bonus for his role in Halo 3. Then Bungie began plans to spin out of Microsoft. In that deal, Barrett received, starting on October 1st, 2007, Barrett was to receive the founder shares, equivalent to approximately 2.5% of his newly spun off Bungie. On December 31st, 2010, Barrett signed an employment agreement with Bungie and was granted 336,000 shares of Series B2 preferred stock and 48,000 shares of common stock. All these shares were to vest over the following decade, would automatically vest upon a change of control, and any unvested shares would be forfeited if Barrett left Bungie voluntarily, which provided significant incentive for Barrett to stay at Bungie, which he obviously did, 25 years. Bungie had made Barrett responsible for the creative and art design for Bungie's next franchise, later named Destiny. Barrett was named co-creator of Destiny alongside Bungie co-founder Jason Jones. Destiny released in 2014 and was a big hit, and it reaped revenues for years to come as a live service game. When Destiny 2 was delayed, Barrett was assigned to do a new expansion for Destiny, and he did it on time and under budget. He then helped with Destiny 2, which shipped in 2017. Post-launch, he became the Destiny 2 game director in charge of the live service team, and his pay was increased later to $240,000. The lawsuit said, "My God! They're paying these Bungie devs too much. $250,000? Jeez. I'm in the wrong business, guys. Listen, I need to fucking drop Trow and become a Bungie dev because I am in the wrong business." In 2021, IGN dropped a bombshell article about #MeToo problems around sexual harassment at Bungie. Without referring to senior managers by name, the story described a range of bad behaviors as well as poor work conditions, such as unpaid crunch time, and that Bungie leadership protected these managers. Bungie CEO Pete Parsons responded to the allegations, saying the company had taken various initiatives to improve behavior and working conditions. Okay, I remember that. While denying any role in such behavior, Barrett alleged on the lawsuit that he witnessed a very senior Bungie executive texting him and others sexually suggestive material, including lewd photographs, texts about his sex life, including graphic descriptions of particular sex acts, and texts concerning the appearance of women working for Bungie. What? That's crazy. What the hell is going on? The lawsuit alleged the same senior Bungie executive frequently showed up for work drunk, attending group meetings while clearly intoxicated, and engaged in sexual conduct at Bungie sponsored events. And it said one of Bungie's founding members made frequent sexist and racist comments in the group settings. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? A very senior Bungie executive? What the hell? For example, in a leadership meeting, he joked that a woman's place is barefoot and pregnant. No. Or words to that effect. Barrett reprimanded him over email, but he faced no consequences, the lawsuit alleged. During an interview, a potential hire told Barrett that Bungie should name a Destiny faction the Rotten Cunt. What? Barrett reported the comment to the group evaluating the candidate and insisted that Bungie not hire him. Leadership still hired the candidate. They still hired him, even after he... Could you imagine? You're walking down the tower. You look to your left, New Monarchy. You look to your right, Future War Cult. You look to the middle, the Rotten Cunt. What kind of a faction is that? The lawsuit said a female office administrator shared explicit stories about her sexual exploits, and at least one Bungie employee frequently exposed himself in the office, including by pulling his pants in the middle of the office and pressing his exposed buttocks against glass overlooking the entire studio. Is this really that big a deal though? Just a little midday mooning, okay? We all are guilty of this, okay? Listen, we're all guilty of this. A little midday mooning, you know? You don't ever just walk around with your bare ass hanging out? You see a nice, beautifully cleaned glass window somewhere? You think, ah, the cheeks are coming out now. It's time. Despite the hashtag #MeToo problems, Sony chose to go ahead with the acquisition of Bungie, the lawsuit alleged. In January 2022, Barrett signed an agreement that would have paid him in the $45 million range. He already has a lot of money. We already know he's making $250,000 at least. He's about to make even more because that big Sony payout. On January 31st, 2022, Sony announced the $3.6 billion acquisition of Bungie. The deal closed January 15th, 2022. Barrett got a $1.8 million payout, but was due $45.6 million. He got $1.8 million to himself. $1.8 million to himself from that Sony buyout. God damn. I mean, obviously they had to buy all of his stock and all of his shares, so that's obviously worth a lot of money. It makes sense, but when you actually look at the amount of money, you're like, damn, that's a lot. That's crazy. Barrett's lawsuit claimed that Bungie lost its autonomy because of the division underperformed Sony's expectations on performance metrics and financial targets. In May 2023, Barrett was publicly revealed as the game director of Marathon. In October 2023, Bungie had a mass layoff of around 100 people. Cost cutting ensued and games such as Marathon were delayed. By February 2025, Sony Games head Jim Ryan announced 8% of Sony's game group would be laid off. That was 900 people. Barrett moved to Florida, and while there, he was replaced by Joe Ziegler as game director of Marathon and was blamed for Marathon's delays, the lawsuit alleged. Barrett was renamed franchise game director. In effect, he was moved upstairs with nothing to manage, while Barrett's manager allegedly belittled him publicly. Barrett then filed for a mental health leave, then the investigation began. Weeks later, Barrett was fired, and after his termination in July 2024, 155 more people at Bungie were absorbed into Sony, and 220 more Bungie jobs were eliminated. And that's the end of that. My God! What have I just read? I'm gonna need time to process all of this. This is easily the craziest lawsuit ever held against Bungie ever. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. And make sure to subscribe. And if you haven't yet, come by the stream and gift a sub. Get your Tabula Rasa emblem. That's a wrap. Holy.